And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fernelli. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3. Also live across multiple Facebook channels. Thanks to all of you that are checking in. Smash that like button for me. Come on. Just get up there and smash it. It's a great way to be able to show your appreciation for the show and for us to spread the show all across the ecosystem. We got a lot to get to today, including a question that's come up a few times in the mailbag, and so we wanted to bring it together into one conversation with Nick Saban continuing as the Alabama head football coach. And, we got some, kind of a basketball tie to this. Mike Krzyzewski will be concluding his career as the Duke men's basketball coach whenever Duke loses in the NCAA tournament. Mike Krzyzewski, in my eyes, and arguably one of the greatest of all time. Nick Saban, in my eyes, and arguably one of the greatest of all time. So Coach K is about to retire. What's going to happen to Duke? What's going to happen to college basketball? We'll do a little thought experiment about what are going to be the implications both at Alabama, across the SEC, and the rest of the country in the event that Nick Saban does retire. But first, we've got some other transfer portal talk that we want to be able to get to. And, I got to ask, we got our bracket challenge entries in, right? Everybody's submitted. Everybody's good, because we want you to come and compete against us in the Cover 3 Bracket Challenge. If you go to cbssports.com/cover3 brackets, again, that is cbssports.com/cover3 brackets, then you can compete against Danny, against Tom, I hope against Bud. We might need to send a smoke signal out to him somewhere, make sure he gets his entry in. But if you win a $100 Paramount Plus gift card. If you win, we might even let you on the show. At a minimum, we will let you set the agenda for a big old bag of mail episode. We reserve the right to make any final edits on that one. But I will say that my picks right now are not fantastic. I had Wyoming plus the points on Sportsline. It did not cash. Tom. You and I were on that. It was a Twitter tip today. And you know what my new theory is? They're using a weird ball. I don't know.
Isn't it brighter? It's like neon orange.
Yeah.
I think we got to go bad ball unders. Ooh. Weird ball unders. It looks like the kind of ball where the needle broke off when you were pumping it up, and so it's got a little rattle into it. Looks like it probably has one of those little humps, or the little bumps in the ball. I think we could be seeing some real clunky basketball until they get used to shooting with this thing.
It was weird, because one of the reasons I was on Wyoming last night was on the season, they were one of the better teams in the country as far as not turning the ball over. They didn't turn the ball over. Indiana plays really good defense, but it's not the kind of defense where they're forcing you to turn over. So I was like, okay, with their size, their rebounding, their ability to get to the free throw line, their ability not to turn the ball over, Wyoming's going to stick around in this game and make it close. And then Wyoming turned the ball over 18 times. So clearly there's something wrong with the basketball, because how else would that happen?
It looks like I got for Christmas, my parents got my girls a basketball that glows at night. But during the daytime, it looks like a weird neon orange. I think that's the ball they're using. Maybe there's a new deal with that company. Maybe that's what they're using.
The last 4 minutes of each half, they're going to turn the lights in the arena off.
That would be so much fun, though. I would watch.
Yeah, that means we got to take Arkansas, because Arkansas does that thing where they turn off all the lights in Bud Walton Arena after big wins. They are more used to playing in the dark. That's your new edge here. But I will be eyeing, especially as we look ahead to Thursday and Friday, as these teams, they're going to get their first hands on it today for Thursday games, Thursday for Friday games. I don't think that's enough time to get used to the weird ball unders. So we'll continue to eye that all along the way. Again, cbssports.com/cover3 brackets. Come and compete against us. We appreciate it. We look forward to our battles. All right, let's start with some transfer portal talk, because we mentioned, actually, Tom had it as a little bit of a breaking news. Pete Thamel on the initial reporting about where former Georgia and USC quarterback JT Daniels might be looking. He recently had a trip to Oregon State, according to John Canzano of the Oregonian. It quote, went well by all accounts. We mentioned Jonathan Smith also, as that was in there. The way that I'm looking at it right now is, and correct me if you guys see this differently, Oregon State, as we just mentioned, he has visited. Other schools in the running include West Virginia, Missouri, Oklahoma State, and Colorado. If there's another one out there that you all have on your list, absolutely interested in it. But with JT Daniels being one of the biggest names uncommitted in the transfer portal, where do we think is going to be the best fit for him?
One quick correction. John Canzano's no longer with the Oregonian.
Is he the Athletic?
No, he's on his own now. He started his own letter, The Bald-Faced Truth. And if you care about the Pacific Northwest or the Pac-12 in general, as far as the sports scene, that's something you probably want to get in touch with because John Canzano's great at it.
I mean, he's one of the alphas, right? He's he's one of those. I wait until Canzano's got a report on it to be able to really start feeling like that is a confident play for me to talk about it here on the Cover 3 podcast or elsewhere.
Yeah, I feel like him and John Wilner are probably the two most important Pac-12 kind of follows you can have as far as what's going on in that conference. But we're getting off topic. JT Daniels, you mentioned the list that Canzano reported. There's Oregon State, which we talked about, Colorado, Oklahoma State, Mizzou, West Virginia. If I'm a quarterback and I'm JT Daniels and I was highly rated out of high school, but I've had problems staying healthy, this is going to be my third school. More important to me than the program or competing for a national title right now is preparing myself for the NFL as best as possible, which means I'm probably going to look for an offense that is more quarterback friendly and a coach that I feel like would do a better job of developing me in that. So just looking at those options, I'm not going to Colorado. I love the school. I love the Buffs, but that's not a top option for me if I'm JT Daniels. I'm probably not going to West Virginia just because Neil Brown's done some stuff, but I haven't really seen any evidence of that at West Virginia to this point. Mizzou, I think, is interesting. It's just maybe I want to get out of the SEC.
Yeah. Especially if health is a concern.
Yeah. So I think Oregon State and Oklahoma State are probably the best two options if I'm JT Daniels. Just looking at what Jonathan Smith has done with some pretty ordinary QBs there since taking over in that offense kind of numbers. And then you look at Mike Gundy, and I know the last few years with Spencer Sanders, that's been a defensive first program. But if you go to what Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State teams were originally, just kind of like air raid offenses, throwing the ball all over the field, I feel like that would be a better fit. So if I'm JT Daniels, I'm looking at Oregon State and Oklahoma State as my two favorites.
I like the way you whittled those down. I think well, let me ask you guys this. How many more games do you think JT Daniels starts in college? Like just in the rest of his career? I mean, I put it at like 5.5.
Oh, wow. Really? Like,
think about where he's been at these incredible programs, and you can eliminate USC because they were down, but he was at Georgia and couldn't keep a job with Stetson Bennett, who we've caught some heat from Georgia fans, especially Bud, by saying, look how many other SEC quarterbacks would have won championships with him. So, and whether it's health or whether it's, inability to just succeed at your position, he was at the best place where they didn't ask you to do a whole lot. All you had to do was kind of steer the ship. And he had moments, but he couldn't keep the job. I would maybe 5.5 is too low, but I'll be shocked if he goes somewhere and just crushes it. I mean, I think we've seen what you get out of JT Daniels, and we got some pretty good. There was flashes of, I don't even know if brilliance is like a strong term, but we saw he could throw the ball vertically down the field those last 4 or 5 games last season. We saw the beginning of this year, but that was in a great system with all this NFL talent around him. I think he needs that. So, like, if you're asking me which one of these makes the most sense, I would say Oklahoma State, especially like they're a team you could still compete. Maybe he's a backup there, and you kind of hope Spencer Sanders, if he, not hope, but if he gets hurt, you're ready to go. I don't know. I don't see JT Daniels having a resurgence and all of a sudden he's a name we're talking about in the NFL draft. I just think we've seen JT Daniels and we know what we're getting, and it's okay, but it's not anything that's going to blow you away.
If you're Spencer Sanders, do you think your job would be in jeopardy if JT Daniels shows up?
You would be nervous of, like, it'd be one of those here's where I've been in this position, whether it was in college or the NFL and a new guy rolls up, you're like, all right, who is this guy? Let's see. Oh, he's a 5-star. Man, you're a little bit on your toes. Like, definitely you're going to feel that pressure somewhat and you're going to have to perform better. But I think Spencer Sanders has kind of established himself as a multi-year starter who had a pretty nice season last year and, a couple inches away from a Big 12 championship. Hey, this is my team still. He's not taking it away from me. And maybe some things in practice would impress and be like, uh-oh, I better perform, but I wouldn't be scared. I think it gets your antennas up and it brings out that competitive nature out of you, which could be a good thing. But all these top, especially Oklahoma State, they've got good quarterbacks on depth charts. Like you're not just coasting to the starting job. You kind of feel like you have to own it every year and compete every year. But I wouldn't say Spencer Sanders would be feeling the heat. I think he would just be like, okay, I mean, I can't slip up, which should be your mentality anyway.
More mobility than JT Daniels.
Yeah.
It was, and I think JT Daniels, though I have not watched him throw down the field against live competition in a while, but probably probably a better downfield passer than Spencer Sanders. If I was Mike Gundy, I would love to have the two of them and be able to know that I've got a lot of different ways that I can formulate this offense and a lot of different ways that, should one get dinged or should one have poor performance, we also have another option there. But I don't know if JT Daniels wants to potentially be on a rope-a-dope type system.
Yeah, that's why I think it's ultimately going to end up being Oregon State, because I think that
He's a West Coast guy too.
Yeah, that's got a lot of things I think working in their favor. Like with Jonathan Smith, the former quarterback in a quarterback-friendly offense, I don't think there's as much of an impediment to the starting job there as there would be at Oklahoma State, because even though JT Daniels has 2 seasons of eligibility left, so it's possible he could go to Oklahoma State, be the backup this year, and then think he's going into next season or 2024 or whatever as the number 1 on the depth chart. I don't know if he wants to do that, because I also feel like if JT Daniels, wherever he ends up, if he stays healthy and he has a good year, he's probably gone. Like he's been in college for a while. I feel like his original plan had hoped to have been healthy for this year, play well at Georgia, and enter this NFL draft, which is not the greatest class as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, because he probably would have been a higher pick. Whereas when he enters next year, he's going to have Bryce Young and other guys to deal with. But I think Oregon State just makes a lot of sense for JT Daniels, even though it might come as a surprise considering, what he was rated out of high school, where he's played so far in his career, and what you would think of where he would end up. And Oregon State's not really considered to be like a top Pac-12 program. But I just think looking at those options, if I'm JT Daniels, and this is just based on not talking to the coaches, not visiting the campuses, none of that stuff, I just think football-wise, Oregon State makes the most sense.
Are we too sheepish for agreeing that going to Missouri in the same division would not be advantageous to either your health or your tape moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not so much that if you're good, if you're trying to get to the NFL, like you better be able to perform well against SEC teams. So I don't think that factor comes into play. I think it's just, I don't like the Mizzou quarterback situation. I don't think is as wide open as Oregon State's is right now. And I just think that track record, I think that Eli's done a great job so far there with like recruiting in his offenses when he was at App State and then coming to Mizzou in his first season there. I just think that it's a lot, I don't know, it's more complicated there, I think. And it's not, it's a combination of a whole lot of things. Like you mentioned, the competition, all that stuff factors in. I think you could go to Oregon State and probably put up good numbers.
I know. I feel like I'm telling people to go to the cheat code. It's like, hey, you could compete against NFL competition this year, or you could compete against less competition and have a better chance of making it to the NFL, where then eventually you will have to compete against NFL competition if you want to be able to stay in the league and be successful. It's a very strange proposition. One other transfer portal thought here. So Ulysses Bentley the fourth, officially entered his name into the transfer portal. You will remember him because he was a big piece over the last 2 years of that SMU offense. Under Sonny Dykes, we saw that be a great place for him. Reggie Roberson at the wide receiver position. The entire offense was very explosive. Bentley was a big part of it. So he enters his name into the transfer portal, like a 1,500-yard rusher, 5.7 yards per carry kind of guy. I find it significant because it comes just a few weeks after we've got reporting from 24/7 Sports, particularly from both Chris Hummer and Steve Wiltfong, that Camar Wheaton, one of the top uncommitted players in the transfer portal, might be a potential candidate to land at SMU. So if you're Ulysses Bentley, and you think that Rhett Lashley and the new coaching staff might be bringing in a former 5-star prospect transfer from Alabama, maybe that's what triggers this. And I thought about putting us in the position of the SMU staff, because on one hand, you have a proven commodity in Ulysses Bentley. I view him as a plus level running back, one of the better running backs in the American Athletic Conference. He has proven it. However, he does not have that same NFL projection that Camar Wheaton, again, a former 5-star prospect, somebody who was the number 3 running back in the 2021 recruiting class. And according to 24/7 Sports, Gabe Brooks, his comp was Ronald Jones with the projection of being a 2nd or 3rd round pick. So you've got a high ceiling with Camar Wheaton. You've got something that with Ulysses Bentley. There's no right or wrong answer here, but I think it's an interesting way to look at what these coaching staffs are having to do with the transfer portal. Would you rather ditch someone on the roster or risk losing someone on the roster that can be very productive and exchange that for that high ceiling player that, maybe didn't make the rotation at Alabama, but based on the raw tools could end up being an NFL player and maybe, one of the keys to your offense?
I think it depends on the situation, and the position. There's a whole lot of things you have to factor in. I think for a running back, if I'm Rhett Lashley, I know Bentley's a good player because we've seen the numbers he did for Dykes, but Bentley's never played for me. So I know just as much about him as I do Camar Wheaton. And I don't know what Camar Wheaton's recruitment was out of high school. Maybe Miami was involved in that. So maybe Lashley has more of a relationship with him based on recruiting him than he does with Bentley. So maybe that makes Wheaton, more attractive. But I think ideally he would have rather had both. But I think just as far as the kind of ceiling versus known argument at running back, give me the ceiling. Because you can find a running back. It's not hard to find a serviceable guy who will fit in your offense that can carry the ball and put up the numbers. There's plenty of those guys, especially, at SMU. When you're in Texas, in that area, you could just throw a rock and you'll find a running back somewhere near your campus that you could probably convince to come to your school. But Wheaton, I think, is, like you said, like Gabe Brooks, and his evaluations of him as a prospect out of high school. He's a 5-star, but he's also somebody Brooks said has the first, 3-round potential of the NFL draft. He ran a 10-6 100-yard dash in high school, timed, confirmed, officials. The kid's got speed. He's bigger than Bentley. So I think that if you're a new coach coming into SMU and you're trying to kind of fire up the fan base, landing a 5-star running back who is not a failure in his 3rd season, who never saw the field. Like Nick Saban said last year, Wheaton tore, I think it was meniscus. And Saban was saying, he's like, no, that's a guy who we wish we had because we think he could really help our offense this year if he was healthy and able to play. So it's not like he's some sort of guy who hasn't lived up to the hype. He's just a guy who got injured and never saw the field and now maybe wants to return closer to home and be a featured guy. So
right.
I think
he's from Texas. I think that's another part of this, you definitely have to take into consideration.
Yeah. So as far as exciting the fan base, here comes the 5-star running back. That makes everybody happy.
Yeah, I think, Tom, you said a lot of things there I agree with, because I think it is very situational. Like every single player, I think it's positional. I think the fact that it's a running back has a lot to do with it, because if Wheaton doesn't work out, you're probably not that much of a drop off from another guy on your roster already. If he does work out and there still is that upside potential, then maybe you have a home run type situation. It could lead the nation in rushing or something along those lines. I think it is easier because at the NFL level, I'm always in favor. I'm more of the Les Snead, bleep them picks, which was his motto as he's building up the Rams Super Bowl roster. Are you kidding me? Why would I care about a 1st or a 2nd round pick when I know exactly what I'm going to get? A Pro Bowl player and a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, or a MVP, Super Bowl MVP like Von Miller. Who cares about these draft picks, which are a 50-50 proposition a lot of times? Give me the known commodity. So I think at the NFL level, it's a little bit more of a stronger take from me on that one. Hey, I want to know what I'm getting. I'll get the known commodity. The upside of a 1st rounder, there's way too much unknown there. But at the college level, I do think it's a little bit different. And this would be an interesting conversation that we're having, where I wouldn't be that worried about, especially at a running back. I'd go ahead and take the swing and say, all right, if you had that opportunity. But I do think it's interesting. And I was you guys saying he's from Texas, I think is huge. Because I did, I was looking up, like Oklahoma was out. There was a couple other programs that were after him. Did they not offer? Did he not go? Did he want to be in Texas? Like some of his decision making, because I do wonder kind of what the word is on the street from some of the coaches health wise. Why? Obviously, you're at Bama, complete like, hey, just be playing time. You're stacked. You're playing behind first round potential, 5 stars. Sure, you don't work there. You go somewhere else. But why the drop all the way to SMU? And it's not a knock against SMU's program, but I bet he had other options if he was as good as he's billed to be coming out. Maybe it's as simple as he wanted to be close to home. And
this is, again, just like SMU is in the running, right? I'm doing that. Okay. So I find out on February 22nd by 24/7 Sports that SMU might be in the running for one of the top prospects. I'm like, oh my goodness. We see the Texas connection. We start to piece that together. Then this week, the Ulysses Bentley. I mean, running back, you can have a lot of them, but that also seems to me to have all the smells of the time-honored tradition of a coach going to a player and being like, hey, I just want to let you know that we think we're going to be doing this. And if you want to go somewhere else, now's going to be the time. There's a deadline in May where you have to transfer in order to be eligible for the fall. And so, I mean, isn't that the same thing that we've seen so many times all throughout college football, especially now with the freedom of movement, that you do, some coaches will give that opportunity to the player? Because that's kind of, we could see Camar Wheaton go somewhere else, but I tend to think that this is where the dominoes seem to be falling.
Yeah, and there's another perspective to this too that we haven't really considered. Like, Bentley was a good player at SMU. Like, he's not a big guy, so I don't know if he's like a bell cow back at a Power 5 school, but somebody might have come sniffing around Bentley.
Oh,
like there might be a Power 5 program that's like, hey, do you want to come play here? Maybe, you can improve your NFL draft stock playing in our offense better than you could in SMU or something. So there's going to be options available for him if he doesn't already kind of have a destination in mind. And I think that he's a guy who, like I said, some Power 5 schools, he's not going to be the 20-25 carry a game guy, but he's a guy who could fit into a lot of Power 5 offenses and put up some really good numbers on some good teams.
100%. As we had to dip into the transfer portal, were there any other names of uncommitted players that have your attention right now? We've got, the Camar Wheaton, Ulysses Bentley, JT Daniels. Anybody else stand out that you've got your eyes on?
There's one just it's not a production standpoint or a prospect standpoint, just interest standpoint. Brew McCoy is sitting in the transfer portal. Now, yes. We all remember Brew. Brew was the 5-star out of high school. He was a top 10 player in his class. He was like back and forth between Texas and USC as far as committing, decommitting, going, transferring, blah, 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 all that stuff. He's been in college for, I think, 4 years, and we've seen him play 6 games because the only time he played was in 2020 during the COVID-shortened Pac-12 season, and he showed some flashes. He caught 21 passes, 236 yards, 2 touchdowns. Then he got arrested in the offseason, was suspended for the entire 2021 season. Now he's in the portal. I don't know what his situation is with the arrest. I don't know what the situation is with the transfer. But considering all the time that I've had to hear about Brew McCoy and all the attention that's been paid to him throughout his career from his recruitment forward, I would love to see the kid play just to see what all the fuss has been about.
I'll tell you, I had a name on my notes, and then as we sat down to record, I realized he had just committed. So congrats to Mel Tucker in Michigan State, because you got Chip's top uncommitted, former Washington State offensive lineman Brian Green, 6'3", 315-pound graduate transfer with 3-year career with the Cougars. I think that is a boost. He was a plus value player on my board, and I found out just before we started recording that he has committed. So congrats, Sparty. You got
I'll be kind of more than like who's available right now. I'll be curious who comes available after spring practice.
Yes.
That to me will be very interesting. Like who, quarter battles, position battles, shakeouts, new coaches for, a full spring. Do you buy into what they're selling or not? Are they more aggressive or harder on you than the previous regime? Like there's a lot that goes into that. So I'll be curious when that kind of new wave of transfer portal entries pops up.
And I do think it will be a wave because they've got a May deadline. So it's like spring practice ends for some of these programs in mid-April or whatever. And then you gotta figure out what the future is going to be for the fall.
Yeah, because I'm guessing you're going to see a few like former highly rated quarterbacks enter the portal because they've just haven't been able to, crack the top of the depth chart at some of the top schools. So there's going to be some big names I would anticipate.
Do you know what the new trend is? I'm sure you guys have seen this because I saw 2 of them already. South Carolina and Oregon spring off-season workout hype videos.
Mm-hmm.
Like I showed it to my 9-year-old.
South Carolina one was good.
It was, man. And they're long. They're like basically it's like going back to MTV in the 80s when they actually played music videos. Like it's basically a music video with workouts. They're fun. So the Oregon one, it was interesting because they like kind of featured Kenny Dillingham. They showed him talking, and it was weird because he's like, "All right, Bo," and you hear Bo Nix, and just it's going to be a little shock to the system because you're talking about a guy who started a lot of games at Auburn. Now he's at Oregon. But the hype videos for off-season workouts and the lighting on the South Carolina one was like a Martin Scorsese film. And they're like it was like watching Platoon because they're doing all these like army, like drag on the ground, like in mud. And it looks like they're going to battle. It was pretty epic.
It deserves like a cinematography nomination at the Oscars.
No, that'll be the new thing at the College Football Awards. They should actually do it. ESPN, we need more awards, right? I mean, geez, we don't have enough. That should be one because it actually does mean a lot to the school.
Best editing of a hype video. The nominees are.
I mean, if we put on all these fancy clothes to give out awards every month, we need an off-season hype video awards for.
You know what we should do? We should come up with our own pre-award show for the College Football Awards. That like whatever Thursday that is, we should do a pre-show for that one and do some of these ones because you could always do like the best TikTok of the year or something like that. Something that's off the radar that we could do.
Locker room celebration video.
Yes.
Yeah. Best guest appearance, like guest star, like what NFL player came in and gave the best speech that we also got the highlights for as a motivation in the team meeting room.
Yeah.
Oh, Danny, these are $1 million ideas. I'm very glad that you're bringing them to the Cover 3 podcast.
Let's go.
Coming up on the other side, at some point, Nick Saban will likely retire. We think. What happens at Alabama, in the SEC, and college football in general? We'll get into that and more next.
This is about our legacy. Always has been and always will be. Paramount Plus presents Women Who Move Mountains. Everybody ready? Let's fly. A celebration of the powerful, hilarious, I'm famous! Game-changing women who bring our series and stories to life. And they're all here on Paramount Plus. Women Who Move Mountains. Explore the collection and so much more on Paramount Plus.
So, again, Mike Krzyzewski is about to lead Duke into the NCAA tournament. He has already announced that at the conclusion of the year, it will be his last. And it has been a wild final season. I don't even know if I care whether Nick Saban's going to be the like retire right away or farewell tour. Maybe that is an interesting side to this, but it brings to light the idea that while one GOAT is leaving college basketball, we are likely at some point going to be doing the same in college football with Nick Saban retiring as the head coach of Alabama and Alabama moving on from him. So there's a lot of different angles that I want to get to this, but for starters, if Nick Saban were to retire, number one, when would you guess that it would be? I think we brought this up as a little side conversation a couple episodes ago. It's one of the reasons why it definitely was bouncing around. And then number two, what do you think would be the Alabama game plan to replace him?
Well, Bud said the other day he thinks he's retiring after next season, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't think that.
I don't believe that, but maybe Bud will be right. I think he's got 2 more seasons in him at least, probably 3 before it really becomes a topic of, because I mean, the one thing to remember, like, he's getting older, yes, but like that Alabama coaching staff is pretty much filled with head coaches. So as he gets older, he could take more of like the Bobby Bowden-ish role towards the end of his career, where he's more of the figurehead and a lot of the assistants are doing more of the day-to-day grind kind of work thing, and he's just busy being Nick Saban.
Nick Saban turned 71 this Halloween. He is 70 years old right now. For the last couple of years, I've said it's like a rolling 3-year clock. Like, I haven't gotten the sense that we're there yet, but I could see it being in the next 2 to 3 years. I feel like if he coaches to 75, I will be stunned. That's why I do think that we are entering that window where it's going to be a little bit interesting.
I don't know. I look, and haven't spent time with Coach Bowden or just watch what happened with Tom Brady recently, like, retiring, then coming back.
That's Cristiano Ronaldo's fault.
Yeah.
No,
I thought it was LeBron's with the fake article that said he texted him.
No, he went to go see Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo had a hat trick in that game. And then Cristiano Ronaldo's approach to like health and wellness and the TB12 method are kind of, they're not the same, but they definitely are
similar. Yeah.
I think it was him sitting in the stands realizing, this is my life after football. I'm gonna have to go watch as a spectator. I don't want to do this. I want to be with the guys on the field. I think that's what it was. But that being aside, so we saw how tough it was and still is for him to give up the game. I think it's gonna be tough for Nick Saban. Like, it's in your blood, and having worked with a lot of these guys in the TV studio, like, they miss it a lot. Like, I just wonder if he could go. And I don't even know if he takes the Bobby Bowden route. I think he thrives. I think a lot of these coaches thrive off the adrenaline, the competition, the winning, like, to just distance yourself as the GOAT of all time, to compete, keep compiling, national championships. And if you feel like that's why Brady's coming back, I guarantee you he's looking around like, I can win the NFC and I can have a chance at another Super Bowl and my play is still elite. Like, I think Saban will, I don't know though. Like, how would the drop off come? I do wonder, like, I think he could coach, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets to 75 at all. But what I do think would be something to look for is a major shift in college football, something we've talked about a lot, and we don't know exactly what it looks like, but that Saban's like, I don't love this anymore. I don't like the direction this is going. Maybe it's, if you said also like maybe Oklahoma, Texas comes to the SEC, that's going to change things dramatically. Payment of players, is that something to look for where he's like, no, I don't want to be a pro coach. I don't want to have to deal with this anymore. So one of those kind of shifts philosophically in college football, I think would be something to look for where Saban's like, no, this isn't what I've been used to. This isn't what I want to do. And then maybe he rides off to the game day set. That's the other aspect of this. The money that's going around in TV networks right now, it's Troy Aikman and, others that are out there, Herb Street getting the job at Amazon, like College Game Day might be, Corso's getting older. They might back up the truck and say, we're losing some of our relevance. We want to boost this thing back up, kind of hit the refresh button. What better way to do it than to go into Nick Saban and saying, come be the face of College Game Day, So maybe that's an option too in a year or two. But again, like, this is where I don't know if that brings the satisfaction to Saban that coaching would. But I do. All right, so I'll give you one more aspect. I'm yapping a lot.
I like it.
I do know the impact that his wife has on him. She might say, you know what? I want to enjoy you the last, 10, 20 years of your life. I don't get you as much as I would like to. Let's enjoy our family. And then the game day job becomes really attractive because then you're traveling once a week, you have off the rest. You can spend that time with your family. So maybe that's an aspect of it too.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he turned 71 on Halloween. But like, when you look at Nick Saban, does he strike you as a 70-year-old man?
The hip surgery is like the beginning of, like, he doesn't play basketball quite like he used to anymore. And the only reason I know about the hip surgery and bring it up is not that it's a concern, but I found it hilarious 2 years ago when one of those behind the scenes mic'd up segments from practice had him telling Devonta Smith that he's got a spring-loaded hip, that he can shoot out off the blocks and beat him in a foot race in the first 10 yards or something like that. And just the Nick Saban deadpanning that he's got a mechanical robotic spring-loaded hip that's going to give him some extra pep. It's the only reason that I remember that he got some hip surgery.
But I mean, it's just what the point I'm making though is just, it's like, he doesn't seem like when you think of a 70-year-old coach, you think of like old man on the sidelines. And like you look at Nick Saban, and there's really nothing about him that screams he's a 70-year-old man. He looks more, he's still got plenty of energy. He's still
He
fired
has
up. You
taken
could
care of
tell.
himself. Like
Yeah.
he is
He's
definitely
still really
doing well.
into it. Like you would think that this is an era now where this job's got to be more like just stressful and tiring than it's ever been at any other time. But it doesn't really seem to be wearing down on him at all. The only thing that wears him out is the losses. So I feel like as long as Alabama's winning, he's probably got a few more years. Now, if the wheels somehow come off and this is a team that starts losing 3-4 games a season, then I think that would expedite the process quickly, but I think that would do it from the outside as well.
So it does wonders for
What?
your look. Keeping that nice head of hair the same color, just magically not having the full head of gray hair.
That's why I keep wondering when Chip's going to retire.
No, if you check Saban on SEC Media Day versus at the national championship game press conference, there is an evolution from July to January.
But it does keep him younger looking. Kirk Ferentz looks older. Mac Brown looks significantly older than him. Chip looks older than all of us. He's the youngest. Like there is something to the optics of not having a full head of gray hair. And he's spry. Like he's in good shape. He does take good care of himself. And it helps to have, a staff of 50 does all the heavy lifting for you.
I was going to say that in terms of the stress and in terms of like what, how much the job would wear on you, the Alabama industrial complex, I think it's one of the only jobs that someone could coach at a high level longer into their age. But if he retires, who do you think is on Alabama's list to call? Do you promote
Dabo? It's Dabo. That's who they've already given the seal of approval to. That's their next head coach. You guys know that, right?
Every time that we've got that surefire replacement, it doesn't happen quite as often. And sometimes the timing doesn't exactly line up perfectly. I mean, Jeff Brom, Louisville, there's just a long list of the alumni go coach at your alma mater that we think is just going to be a surefire home run and going to happen. And it doesn't always happen that way. I could see there being like an internal, like Pete Golding, whether it is Nick Saban influenced or whether it is a decision to try and establish some continuity by the athletic department, taking the Alabama job to the open market would be incredible for just Jimmy Sexton and head coaches everywhere for all of the extensions and raises that would come out of it. But there's also a possibility that like Duke, who's going to have John Shire take over, like North Carolina, who's going to have Hubert Davis take over, that there could be someone on that staff who steps up. And I don't know, would you take it to the open market?
I think that if you're Alabama, like Danny said, I think Dabo is a name you go after, but I don't think you take it to the open market. I think you might have a list of 2 or 3 established coaches who you might gauge their interest on it to see if they want to come take it. And then I think, Chip, you're right. I think it's more likely to be an internal promotion than it will be going to get like a Dabo Swinney or an Urban Meyer, whoever the hell you want to throw out as possibility. Or maybe it would be the return of a coordinator who's having success in their job, whether that's like Lane or Sarkisian or something. But I just think
I'm talking about the guy who won the national championship this
year.
year.
What I was saying.
Kirby's not leaving
Sexton's
Georgia.
Going to be playing these schools like, oh my gosh, he's going to float a couple of those. Hey,
that's
Kirby
the thing,
Smart.
Kirby's got no reason to leave Georgia for Alabama though, because Kirby is a king in Athens. Like if
you
leave
Dabo,
he's
so is Dabo
university president.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think Dabo would take it either, because that's the other thing you have to consider. Like you're replacing Nick Saban, you're not going to be as good. The fans are going to hold you to the same standard, and the odds that you live up to it are very, very slim. So there's a very good chance you'll be there for a few years before they can you and find somebody else and try to be like, we got to restore Alabama to greatness. It's like, man, what you have right now is not normal, and it is not likely that whoever the hell you hired to replace him is going to be able to keep doing it.
Is there almost like you do not want to be the guy to follow the guy.
No.
And so that's where I wonder if these coaches are like instantly, no, that's not going to be me. But in 2 years, when that doesn't work out, then I'll be the hero and make the hero's return. The other name, so you guys, the three names I had thought of were Dabo, because it's always mentioned. It was Kirby, because he was on the staff for so long, but I don't think either one of them would leave. And then Mario Cristobal spent some time on that staff. If he wins at Miami, like, I think he would be a name. But two of them played at their universities, at Miami and at Georgia. Dabo played at Alabama. I don't think, like, as much as I'm sure you guys can sense some of the sarcasm in the Dabo to Alabama talk. Again, shifting landscape of college football. Have you guys seen the latest numbers on the ACC payouts compared to the SEC? Yeah. And acts like, if you're a school, like, I'd be nervous. The ACC, I am worried about long term.
Yep.
And if the SEC keeps separating and you want to win national championships, I mean, maybe it does look more attractive for Mario or Dabo, even though they have great, ties to their programs for different reasons, to find that job more appealing than they would have 3 years ago.
Some context to what Danny just said. A study was run recently. Currently, the per school payouts from the conferences to the universities, the ACC is $25 million behind the SEC. The projections are by 2029, 7 years down the line, the SEC will have doubled the gap and be $50 million ahead of the ACC by that.
$100 million per school in the SEC, 50, roughly 50 to the ACC schools.
Yeah, it is. Like, I thought this could be like a topic for a show. We could probably go deeper dive onto it, like, for an episode, but like, it's not a coincidence that the SEC's basketball has improved while the ACC's has suffered, and it's the money, because the ACC just does not have the kind of money that the SEC has, and they've been able to invest in their basketball programs that they just weren't doing before. And if you look at the schools and the footprints, they're all tend to be fighting for the same recruits. And then you look at, like, Duke in North Carolina, we just talked Coach K's retiring, Roy Williams retired after last year. That leaves somewhat of a question mark kind of power vacuum in what has been the ACC's two figurehead basketball schools forever. I'm with you, Danny. I don't think the future for the ACC looks great right now in football or basketball.
We will have that probably for another show. Okay, so what about the rest of the SEC? Does this change the expectations for Jimbo Fisher? Does this, if Brian Kelly is still at LSU when this happens, does that put him on a hot seat or some kind of intense pressure? Because if there is that power vacuum, if it is unlikely that Nick Saban's replacement is going to be able to win at the same clip and the same level, then there are wins, there are division titles, and there are conference titles that are now more in the realm of possibility for a Texas A&M, for an LSU, for a Florida, Billy Napier, for obviously Georgia to continue to build what it's got in the trophy case. Who do you think ends up starting to feel that heat? Or maybe you don't think it's heat. Who do you think has the best opportunity to take a step forward and raise their level of success as a program?
Well, I think the most likely outcome, based on what we know now, is Georgia kind of slides in
and becomes Alabama.
Becomes Alabama, yeah, and becomes the most dominant SEC program. But I think that more than anything, like, I do think that while Georgia would be the dominant one, I do think it'd be. I mean, it's already open, really, honestly, when we talk about it. Alabama dominates it, but look at the last three national titles. Three different SEC schools have won. Auburn's won a national title in recent memory. There's been SEC teams, Florida, but I think it opens it up a little bit more, especially in the West. But I don't know. It's really going to depend on, like, what Jimbo's doing, how that program's firing at the time. So, yeah.
I think that if you're Brian Kelly and you just arrived at LSU and you're 60 years old, then you are working, at least, or someone around that building is working with the assumption that Brian Kelly has a 2 to 3 year window right now to really ramp things up, and that when Saban retires, you hit the button because you're ready to go. That Jimbo Fisher's big contract that he got at Texas A&M, and somewhere in their minds was with the idea that Nick Saban will retire at some point, and we want to make sure this thing is humming so we can hit the button and be ready to go. And while divisions are going to go by the wayside when the SEC expands, those are two programs that are going to be very, very hungry to jump on whatever's available when Saban's gone.
Yeah, it's hard to say, honestly.
Like, I think Nick Saban retiring could get a coach fired within 3 years of its exit.
Or does it help because they're not winning it every year? So then like maybe they don't win at all. Maybe they're getting knocked off by Georgia, but maybe you're getting there more. Like you're getting to the conference championship game because Alabama isn't. That's a big if too, assuming that Alabama falls by the wayside, which I think there will be a vacuum. There will be a transition period for Bama. That's going to be, tough to go through. I mean, it's kind of the cycle that happens, but I think a lot of it, like, I think there's different ways to look at it, Like if somehow Auburn, let's say they move, I don't know if Brian Harsin figures it out, but let's say they come up, then I think, yeah, if they're winning and LSU is not, and Texas A&M is not, then I think it puts an immense amount of pressure on Jimbo Fisher and Brian Kelly,
who are well compensated to make sure that those programs are at the top of the conference. Very, very interesting. We will be back with you on Monday, back at our regular position of noon Eastern time on Monday. Remember, off-season noon on Monday, noon Eastern time. You can make sure that you can watch us live, youtube.com/cover3. One more time for the people in the back. It is cbssports.com/cover3 brackets. If you win our bracket challenge, you get a $100 Paramount Plus gift card and you get to contribute to the show. You can either jump on or you can just send us topics and we'll bump you to the top of the mailbag to be debated later once you get that W. Because I know that either Tom or Danny is probably going to win this thing anyway. And then guess what? They get to run a show for an entire day. And then all y'all have to deal with it. cbssports.com/cover3 brackets. Come and hang out with us. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go spring break.